I've gone on record stating that I'm not a big fan of sports, and by extension, sports movies. That doesn't mean I think all sports movies are bad. If anything, I think they're the one genre that should be the hardest to screw up. I mean, all the basic ideas for a basic three-act structure are there. The sport makes for the perfect conflict in it. I mean, think about it. Rocky, The Karate Kid, Cool Runnings, Remember the Titans, Miracle, especially. They all have the basic elements of the three-act structure. I mean, sports movies practically write themselves. I mean, look at frickin' Sandlot. Anyway, ever since we've gotten films like Draft Day and Moneyball, everybody's kind of been trying to go beyond the sport, showing some sort of behind-the-scenes thing, or some sort of angle of the sport that we haven't seen before, thus making a straightforward sports film somewhat of a rarity in this day and age. That said, I get the feeling that the industry is a little bit rusty when it comes to making straightforward sports films, especially the kind that are meant to be uber inspirational, that are supposed to make you feel good. I mention this because When the Game Stands Tall has all the pieces and the makings of an inspirational sports film, but it lacks a through line or a structure, or really a nice element to make it all a cohesive whole. It's all the pieces, but there's nothing to really connect them, or really to connect them strongly. It's basically like someone decided to try to build a Gundam model, but forgot to use glue. When the Game Stands Tall tells the story of a high school football team that had a 151-game winning streak, only to have said streak broken after various incidences of happenstance, misfortune, and tragedy, the team then having to come together to make some sort of big comeback as they start the next season. With that synopsis, I run into the film's first problem. What is this film focused on? Who is this film about? Is the film about the coach? Is the film about the team as a whole? Is the film about key players? It raises all these questions but never really answers them, because I'm not even sure the people writing the script knew who they wanted to focus on. I mention this because there are a lot of moments where they try to have the uplifting speeches, as well as the various dramatic beats and cliches, such as the father obsessed with his son getting the touchdown record, or the coach trying to teach them that the streak is not important, as well as the whole visit to the veterans hospital that's supposed to make them all inspired. These ideas aren't inherently bad. There isn't enough development of any of the characters to really give them any weight. They feel like they just come right out of nowhere, and were probably worked in the script all for the sake of drama, a forced conflict, if you will. Another problem is that it takes a while for the film to actually get to the inciting incident, the breaking of the winning streak, a good 20 minutes or so before the team that they're facing off against is even mentioned or even brought up. Now, they didn't really give much build up to the team, since I understand that wasn't the point, but it's just a case that it took a while to... Let's try that again. Another problem is that the film takes a while to get to its inciting incident, the breaking of the winning streak. To me, it felt like it was a good 20 minutes before the game where it actually happened even came up. And even then, it doesn't linger on the breaking of the winning streak for very long, since it pretty much just bounces through the dramatic scenes of everybody feeling bad about themselves very quickly, and almost kind of skips straight to the big comeback. Really, it just made the whole film feel kind of rushed, and just not really lingering on anything for very long, which is why the dramatic elements feel out of place. On that note, the editing of this film is pretty weird. The best way to describe it is that when they're showing the football games, they're basically cutting it like a trailer, showing only the shaky action shots, the close-ups, the emotional reactions, without any real exchanges between the players or the different teams, or even any establishing shots to really show what's going on. It pretty much has to say, oh, it's such and such game, it's this game, without really showing an establishing shot to kind of establish visually where we are. And while you can say that they do have that sort of stuff in the last game of the film, that's supposed to be the last big game for a lot of these players as they're graduating, the way this film covers all these various games that this team played, it just makes the whole thing feel oversaturated and crowded. And really, it could have benefited from a case of, instead of having all these games packed together, maybe just focusing on the two important games. The game where the winning streak is broken, and the game at the end where it was kind of signifying the big comeback, instead of trying to just cover all this ground in one sitting. To me, it felt like the story just wasn't a good fit for a feature film. It probably would have done better as a TV miniseries or maybe even just an ongoing television series like Friday Night Lights. That way they would have more time to develop the characters and plot lines that they were trying to work into the script to create drama. If they actually did it as a miniseries or a television series, then they would have been able to develop those elements properly and actually have the moments meant to carry dramatic weight actually carry said dramatic weight. Overall, it's a pretty mediocre film. It has some good acting bits, but I couldn't really get invested. And that mainly comes from the fact that it's one thing to see a champion knocked down from his pedestal, but if you spend too much time establishing how invincible he is, you'll risk boring the audience. And to me, that's what happened. They spent too long establishing how they were unbeatable that by the time the inciting incident happened, I lost interest. I was bored. I just like, why am I watching this film? I don't really care about these characters. Really, if they just focus the story on the coach, the team as a whole, a la Remember the Titans, or the key players that had the various dramatic subplots, it could have worked. They just needed to pick one plot thread and develop it. But here they're basically trying to have their cake and eat it too, with all of the various cliches and all the various dramatic moments, that it just doesn't really work. It's a bit of a mess. If you're a fan of football, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of it, but really, my recommendation is just read the book it's based on. You'll probably get much more insight into the story of the De La Salle Spartans than you can with the film proper. That's really the best way to put it. Again, there was potential here. This was just not the best way to adapt this story for the screen. That said, When the Game Stands Tall gets a 3 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.